Well, welcome back everybody to another video. I'm Graham from Great Off-Road Adventures, and as you probably would have seen from this title, this is going to be a basic video on HF radios. From our spectacular campsites on the most remote of tracks to the workshop and everything in between, your next episode of Great Off-Road Adventures is just seconds away. So I've had my HF radio for over a year now, and I've got to tell you, in the time leading up to when I got it, when I first got it, I really had not a great deal of knowledge on how they worked and how to use them, what functions they had, and how to get the best performance out of them. So I've self-taught myself. I've also spoken to a few friends that have used HFs for a while, some of them going back many decades. So I've absorbed a bit of knowledge from some people around me, and now what I want to do is put together a quick video for you guys that are looking at getting HF radios, where we cover off just the basics on how to use them and the basic functionality of them and what you've got to look out for. So yeah, without any further ado, let's get straight into the video. Just a heads up, if you do want to skip ahead or move around in the video, it is chaptered or indexed, so it makes it a bit easier for you all. Anyway, let's see what makes up a HF radio. Well, arguably the most recognizable piece of the HF radio system is the antenna. It's the piece that everybody can see. There's two types of antennas. There's an auto-tuning antenna and there's a multi-tap. So the multi-tap antenna is equally as tall as the auto-tuner, but it is pretty much just the thinness of the top of the spring the whole way through, and there's multiple points throughout the height of the antenna where you unplug a cable from the bottom, you unwrap it, a certain amount of turns, you plug it into the next tap or next plug on the antenna, and that's how you tune that antenna to suit the frequency or the channel that your radio's on in the car. So the multi-tap antenna is a lot simpler, it's a lot cheaper, it's a lot more inconvenient. Now in my case, I'm running an auto-tuning antenna, and what that means is in this bottom section here, this big dark black bottom section, there are some electrical components, stepper motors and whatnot, that adjust the tune of the antenna to suit the frequency or the channel that the radio is on. So yeah, what that means is the radio tells the antenna that it's changed frequency, and to tune, the antenna adjusts itself to find the best tuning point. And obviously you can do that on the move. You don't need to hop out and come and do anything. It's just a pretty much a set and forget system. Now obviously the auto tuning antennas, they can develop a fault. It is not at all common, but it can happen. But yeah, they're pretty much proven to be just as good or equally as good, and obviously a lot more convenient. Now obviously they also come with a trade-off. They cost a little bit more. So if you're setting yourself up or you're looking to set yourself up with a HF system, for me, with the travel that we do, obviously we change channels quite frequently. It would be very painful to every time change channel, come out and adjust a multi-tap antenna. It would frustrate me to no end, and so because of the convenience really alone, I've got an auto tuning antenna. Well, the next component to talk about that makes up your HF radio is, in my case, the handpiece. In other cases, it's the head unit of the radio. So that's the controlling piece of the radio. You'll set it up either, you know, maybe on the sides of the transmission tunnel or somewhere up the front. Some people have it in an overhead console, and ultimately the more modern radios have gone the same way as UHFs, where all the control of your HF radio is on the handpiece. The older units have the separate head unit, and then they just go to a dedicated handpiece which just has the microphone and the speaker and nothing else. So yeah, I'm pretty fortunate. I think it's a lot easier to install in your car, just in the same way that a UHF is, to have the control pieces or the controls for your HF radio on the handpiece itself. So yeah, for interest's sake, I'm running a Coden NGT. Again, it's not the latest and greatest HF radio. It's either 1 or 2 generations old, but in the grand scheme of things, it's still pretty modern, and it can do everything that more modern radios can do as well. So suits me perfectly, really. Anyway, let's just talk about the last piece now. It's going to be difficult for me to show you, but I'll show you anyway. The last piece is the actual main box or brain of the radio itself and the speaker. In my case, I've got that installed on the cargo barrier. It's out of the way, it's safe, it's up high so that it can't get wet, and everything plugs in there. Power, handpiece, speaker, auto tuning antenna, and then obviously the coax for the antenna as well. So yeah, just clarifying, if you're running an auto tuning antenna, you have to run 2 sets of cabling to get there. One's a coax for the actual radio transmission and receiving. The other one is a communication wire that communicates to the auto tuning function of the antenna. Anyway, that pretty much wraps up your main components of your HF radio. I do have one additional piece. I've got GPS functionality with my HF radio, so I've got a GPS tracking device set up on the dashboard here. So, how does a HF radio work? Well, let's get into it. Alright, well, I've decided to film this next little section at home because I actually found my HF is working better from home today than it was out of Bells Rapids, which is where I started filming the video. Let's get into talking about how the HF works, and then I'll do some demonstrations on what I mean by it. So how a HF works and how it gets us long distance, it works via 2 ways. Now, the first way is the HF is actually transmitting with 100 watts of power, whereas if you compare that to a UHF, it's only transmitting at 5 watts of power. So a HF is straight out of the box 20 times more powerful than a UHF. So it stands to reason that its radio waves are a lot more powerful and will go a further distance. The second reason is actually to do with part of the Earth's atmosphere, which is called the ionosphere. And that part of the atmosphere, it actually bounces radio waves in a certain spectrum, which is the HF spectrum. It actually bounces them back down to the surface of the Earth. Yeah, it's quite clever how it works. So yeah, when you use your HF radio, it propagates 2 sort of types of radio waves. Your ground wave, which is your immediate sort of area around your car, much like how your UHF works, but it obviously covers a greater distance because it's got more power behind it. And then it propagates your sky waves, which is what goes up and bounces off the ionosphere and comes down again. Now, in really good conditions, you can get them to bounce off the ionosphere, come down, hit the Earth's surface, bounce again, hit the ionosphere, come down. So as they go, they skip between those 2. And obviously, every time they skip, they get further and further and further out. The other thing that affects that is time of day / night. During the daytime, you need to go on a higher frequency, and during the night time, you need to go on a lower frequency. The rule of thumb, the phrase of speech is the sun high in the sky, high frequency, the sun low in the sky, lower frequency. In mine, it's got 10 different channels, and each channel is a different frequency. The higher the channel, the higher the frequency in my case, and with that, the higher the frequency, the greater the distance that I can get. So it's a pretty powerful tool when it comes to remote travel, and obviously that's the specific reason why I have it and why I'm doing this video. Once you understand that and you understand that theory, it makes it a bit easier when you go to use your radio when you're out and about traveling, to then go, okay, I'm this far away from the base station, I need to be using my lower frequency channels, or I need to be using my higher frequency channels, depending on that distance. Now that we've covered off that, we can talk a little bit more about some of the scenarios that you would use your HF in, or some of the scenarios and how I use mine, and obviously how other remote travelers might use theirs, and we can do some demonstrations and stuff with it as well. Well, in order to operate a HF radio in Australia, you need to be a part of a network. So let's cover off some of the network information quick. First things first, to use a HF radio in Australia, you either need to be a licensed amateur radio operator, or you need to be signed up to a network. So for Jess and I, it was just simpler for us to sign up to a network, because then we get the support of that network when we do our traveling. Network I chose to sign up with is Austravel Safety Net, and so when I signed up with them, I got sent a whole heap of information that all relates to using the HF radio on their network, and obviously I put all that together in an idiot's folder or a dummies guide so that I can reference it, or Jess can reference it when we're out traveling. So that's what this folder is, and there'll be times when I do have a look at it as we go through the video, and I'll briefly cover off what we've got in there now. So right on the front cover, it's our license to transmit, or authority to transmit, and that's for the Austravel Safety Net network. As we go in the book, the first section I've got is just an approximate guide to frequency bands and ranges, so distance ranges, and so it gives you some idea there based on your distance you're trying to transmit, what sort of megahertz range we should be in. Onwards from there, we go to probably the section that we use the most frequently, and that's Sched calls and network information. So there's 6 bases that make up Austravel Safety Net, and I've got all their details on the page here. So you've got Perth, Kununurra, Alice Springs, Casino, Shepparton and Mareeba. So if you look at them on a map, they're pretty much spread out. One in far north Queensland on the east coast, one on the central east coast, one down south in Victoria, Alice Springs in the middle, Kununurra up in the sort of northwest of the continent or country, and Perth down in the southwest. So you imagine these HF radios can do 2,000 kilometres. There's pretty much nowhere on the continent or nowhere in the country that you can't get into at least 2 different bases. So yeah, that's pretty good, and I'm going to explain why that is and why that works so well as I move on. So then, yeah, the next thing that I have in the folder is scheduled call times. So I'll touch on what the Sched calls are now, and I'll give you a look at what they look like. So it's just a timetable there that has the state, the channel, the base, and the time. And so the Sched call window is when there's an operator that is dialed into the base and is actually there physically for someone to talk to on the other end of the radio. And what that means is, like, if the base that I was closest to, or the base that I was talking to, was Perth, I would look for the Perth base time here. I know that I'm in Western Australia, and so to check into Perth base in the afternoon, if I was going to use channel 8, so if I was a long distance away from Perth, I'd go in between 4:30 and 4:35 p.m. Say I was a lot closer to Perth, like I am now. I'm actually in Perth, I'm at home. If I was going to check in, I'd utilise channel 1 or channel 2, and they run between 4:45 to 4:55 if it was channel 2, because that's probably the most common channel, and 4:55 to 5 p.m. if you were channel 1. So it's just a reference guide to tell you what time the operator is going to be there, what time the base station is going to be put into Sched call mode. Outside of the Sched call times, the base stations go into their automatic operation mode. So that means when you ping them for a channel test or a beacon test, if you ping them for a cell call, or you send text message, or your GPS location, or you make a phone call, whatever, the base is completely run. It's completely automated, and there's no other input required except the inputs that I make on my radio. So yeah, I guess what I'm saying there is you've got to be mindful if you're wanting to send your GPS location off. you can't do it whilst the base is in the base operation mode for the scheduled calls. You can do it before, or you can wait and do it afterwards. So yeah, and then moving on, the next section of the folder I have here is selcal list. So it literally is every member that's part of Austravel Safety Net. So if for whatever reason I need to ping somebody in particular, or they want to ping me, then when their radio ID number comes up on mine, I can look up and see who they are. And then I can talk to them on a first name basis instead of having to utilise our 4-digit call signs, or our unique numbers as our call signs. And then onwards from there, through the rest of the book, I've just got guides. So guides on how to contact RFDS if required, how to initiate an emergency if required, how to use the out and about application, which again I'll touch on that later on. Right at the very end, I've included the guide for the code and NGT, which is the HF radio that I've got installed in the car, so that should I forget how to do something, or should I need to change a setting or something in the radio, I've got a full paper guide on how to do that here. And so this white folder, you may have seen it in other clips, it literally just lives down the side of the seat here near the center console. It's out of the way, but it's ready there should Jess or I need it to pull up information to use the HF. Now we've understand a little bit about how the HF works and how the network works. Let's actually look at a couple scenarios, the more common ones, and how to do it and what the process is when it comes to using your HF. Well, it's time to demonstrate some of the functions of the HF radio. Now, if you're like me, at the beginning, I had no clue about these things, so I'm sure this will be helpful to a lot of you. For example, probably the most common one that I do is I send my GPS position. I would probably do that 3 or 4 times throughout the day. For example, like when we were up north, where we stopped for lunch, I would send my GPS location. If we got out of the car to do a walk, like what we did at the Kennedy Ranges, I'd send my GPS location. And at camp at the end of the day or night time, I'd send my GPS location so that my family and friends and whatnot can see that that's where I'm camping. So I'll get my phone out because it's quite clever how this works, and we will cover it all off now. I've got the radio right now on, it's on scanning, and that's so that we don't have to listen to the squelch, but I'm going to sort of explain the process and then I'll do it on the radio and I'll show you what it looks like. So before you send any calls to the base stations, particularly the base stations, it's important to work out what channel is the best channel to be on. And obviously, like I said, that is determined by the distance you are from the base station and the atmospheric conditions, whether it's daytime, nighttime, that sort of thing. So this afternoon, I've quickly just tested it before we were filming, and I'll demonstrate a beacon test for you now. Sorry about the squelch noise, but I'm going to turn scanning off. Channel 2 was the channel that I found worked best, but I'll demonstrate on channel 1 as well. So channel 2, I will go for a channel test call, and 6199 is the unique ID number for Perth base. So I will make that call and I'll explain the noises that's going to happen. So that noise there, that's the radio dialing out to the base station. And then we'll get a ping back. So that beep, 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 beep. That there is the revertive. It's called a revertive. It's the return signal from the base station back to my radio. And depending on how clear that revertive is, it shows me how well my signal is getting to the base and how well the base is getting back to me. So that is actually pretty strong revertive, and that's going to make it a lot easier for us to demonstrate the next few bits and pieces. So channel 2 is working really well. I'll quickly do channel 1 and we'll see how it is. So again, same noise, radio's dialing out. And now we'll listen. It was okay, but it was a bit distorted. Channel 2 was a lot better. So we'll just do channel 2 again quick. See, it's a lot more distinct and clear. So the scenario is we've pulled up for the day, we've reached our campsite, and just like how I normally would, I want to send my GPS location off to Austravel Safety Net, and it also is recorded in the Out and About application, and so my family and friends and whatnot can see where we are. So first thing I'd do, because I have to send that GPS location to the base station, is make sure that we have a strong connection with the base station. And that's what we've just done by doing that beacon test. So then the next thing I can do is just go straight into doing the send GPS position. So once you know you've got a strong connection to the base, then you can just kick on with whatever you need to do. So we'll turn the scanning off. We know that channel 2 worked better than channel 1, so we'll stay on channel 2. And I'll go to send position. Again, Perth base is 6199, so we'll send it to Perth base. Now the radio will do something a little bit differently. It's going to have a different tone get played back to us, and that's the base acknowledging that it's received my position. There we go. And then I'll get a message on the screen saying GPS position recorded. And so once the GPS position is recorded and I've had that message pop up, I know that it's been recorded at the base station. And so pretty much immediately once it's recorded, I can get my phone. I've got my own Out and About application, so I can go in and look at it, and it should say just now, right there, 3:07 p.m, Graham and Jess, 15th of April. So literally it pops up straight away. So whoever's following us, be it my parents or Jess's parents, provided they've got the Out and About application and it's all set up and whatnot, they can follow us, and you know, it's literally, it's that easy. The other thing that the application is good for is sending messages. So through the application, I can send a message to my HF radio. So yeah, I'm sending it 25592, that's my unique ID number, and I'm just going to say, hey Graham, can't do characters or anything, just needs to be text from mobile. So pretty simple, and I'm going to send that now. So it's sitting there. The way in which the text messaging works is that message is now sitting on every one of those 6 base stations around Australia. And the second my radio checks in to one of those base stations with a selcal, the base station will play the revertive tone, so I know it's got a strong connection, and immediately followed behind that, provided it's all been successful, there will be a receiving tone played, much sort of like how we had that receiving tone from the GPS position being sent. We had a receiving tone saying the GPS position has been recorded successfully. We'll have that my message that I've just sent myself pop up. So radio sitting here on scan, turn the scan off. We're still on channel 2 because we know that works best. I push call. I do a selective call, not a channel test, but a selective call to Perth base. And what will happen, it'll sound similar at the beginning. This is my radio sending its message out. We'll then get the revertive, and immediately behind that we'll have the message come in. So there's the revertive. And this is my text message that I've sent myself coming in. So if we look at it on the radio, there's my message from 5592. Hi Graham, or hey Graham from mobile is what I said to myself. And so with that, obviously my parents, Jess's parents, whoever can message us. At the same time, we can message back to them. So for me, if I was to send a message, I'll try and load it up here again. Right, I go down, I go to message. Like everything, I have to send the message to a base station, and then the base station converts that into a text message to get sent out. So I'm operating to Perth base because that's the closest one, the one we've worked out works best with channel 2. So base station first. Then I enter my phone number, which I'm going to blur out so that you guys can't see it. And the text message I'm going to send is hello GR8 AD. It says you, so I'll fix that. So it's going to be GR8 ADV. So it's going to say, the message is going to say hello GR8 ADV, which is the number plate of the car. And so we're happy with that. We'll get my phone up. And so yeah, this is the radio sending a text message from the radio to Perth base, which converts it to a text message, sends it out to my phone. This is the revertive from the base back to my radio to say it's successful. And before the revertive's even done, I've got the text message on my phone. So there you go. Response saying call completed, and the text message on my phone. So, yeah, pretty bloody good, really. And it says there, you know, hello GR8 ADV, reply using the Out and About app. It says it came through Perth base on channel 2. And honestly, it didn't take long to type it out, send it. And once I send on the radio, it's within a couple seconds that it comes through on my phone. You can do things like making a phone call through your HF radio. So yeah, like if I was to demonstrate that now, I would dial in call, I would go phone, I have to send through my phone number first, and then ask which link I'm going through, which is Perth, and I hit go, and it's going to dial. Again, I'm going to blur out my phone number so you can't see it in the video, but you'll see what's going to happen here. That's the base station dialing my phone number, so that's Perth base, and now it's ringing. Oh, so hold on, there it's dialing. Now it's going to be ringing. It's difficult to do a phone call on my own because the way it works is as soon as I speak into the phone, it automatically transmits that. So it's voice activated transmission from the phone. And obviously to talk on the HF, to respond, it's just like talking on your UHF. You key the button, you talk, you let go of the button, and then as soon as the other party on their phone starts talking, it starts sending again. If you're both talking at the same time, you won't hear each other. You've got to remember that, yes, it's a phone call, but it's still a radio call. So for me to talk, I've got to push and send, and then the other party has to talk and then stop talking and listen, let me respond by pushing and talking, and then it allows them, when I stop talking, allows them to talk and send again. And yeah, I mean, it's pretty good function. It is not secure though. It's not like a phone call where I call someone from my phone and the only people that can hear it are me and them. because the section that goes from the base station to the HF radio, anybody with a HF radio who's on that channel who can hear that call will hear both me talking out, and it will hear the base station returning the phone call back to me. So they'll be able to hear everything. So don't go broadcasting your credit card details or that sort of thing over a HF phone call, because anybody else with a HF is also going to be able to hear it. But yeah, that pretty much covers off the day-to-day functionality of the HF. I want to quickly touch on how the emergency function works. That one I'm not going to demonstrate. You'll just have to take my word for how it works. And again, I've learned that through reading the manual. But essentially what it does is it starts on the lowest channel and it broadcasts out a unique identification number, which for Oz Travel Safety Net, it's the word HELP, H-E-L-P. So 4357. 4357 spells out the word HELP. So it sends that, it broadcasts that unique ID number, and all the bases, all 6 of them that cover Australia for Oz Travel, all receive that same number. So they're all are programmed with their normal base number. They're also programmed to receive the unique HELP number. But what happens when the base receives that distress message is it automatically takes the GPS position if it has it. So my radio will automatically send the GPS position at the same time, and it will put the channel that it received it on, the base, the GPS location, and the unique ID number, being 5592 for us. It packages all that together and it sends that out in a text message to, I think it's about 10 or 15 different members that are all Oz Travel Safety members. So they receive actually a text message on their mobile phone. And so the first thing they do is, with their mobile phone, they can actually dial in and connect to any one of the 6 bases and essentially operate that base from their mobile phone. So, for example, if we're up north and we come across an accident, or we have an accident ourselves, we can send out a distress message. It'll most likely be received by Kununurra Base, for example, and then that is sent out to all 15 members. Now, between them, one of those 15 will jump on to the base and will then attempt to contact me. Now, they know which base they need to log on to, they know which channel they need to go on to, and they know who they need to talk to, because they have all that information. It's all sent at the beginning. So I should send out the distress message and then sit next to my radio, because my radio, when it receives the reverter from the base as well, will decide that that's the channel that we're going to use, and that's the one it'll stay on. The emergency coordinator, I should say, the emergency coordinator will then contact me on that channel through that base. I can then relay my emergency to them, be it an accident or a snake bite or whatever the situation is, and then they coordinate with emergency services to get help to us. The next thing is, a lot of remote emergency services still have HF as well themselves, and so they can actually then patch in through the network and through that appropriate channel and also contact us directly. So it's pretty clever how it's done. All I have to know how to do is to push and hold the red button on my radio, which sends out the distress message, and it will start on channel 1 first. And if it doesn't reach any bases with channel 1, it automatically goes to channel 2. And how it knows that is, if it receives a reverter from a base, that means the signal's been sent to the base and received, the revertive's been sent back. If it receives no revertive, it automatically goes on to the next channel. So to go to channel 2, repeat the process, send out the distress message. If it's not received, then there's no revertive. So it automatically goes to channel 3. And it does that until one of the base stations, and then obviously that depends on your distance from the base station, picks up the signal, the distress signal, and as soon as it picks up the distress signal, it sends the revertive so that I know that that is the channel I need to be on. And then with that, the guys, the emergency coordinator will receive the text message, and then they'll dial in and talk to me. So obviously the other thing that you can use a HF radio for is just like a big UHF radio. You can use it to talk to other people with a HF radio on their vehicles. Some people even have a HF radio installed at their house. So like for example, when we were up north, we were coming south from Exmouth and my in-laws were travelling north from Perth. We were actually able to talk to each other on the HF up until the point where we were about 100 and so Ks apart, and then our signals were going over the top of each other and we were in a bit of a black spot there. But yeah, you can use it just like a UHF radio. You do need to be mindful though that carrying on with personal conversations and that sort of thing will obviously possibly interfere with other people if they need to make a phone call to organise help or spare parts or some form of assistance, or in the case of an emergency, if someone needs to initiate an emergency. Because HF transmits such a long distance, you know, hundreds to even thousands of kilometres, if you're carrying on having a private conversation, you might be interfering with someone 1,000 kilometres away who's got an emergency, who's trying to get help. So just going to be a little bit mindful of that whilst you do it, but provided that you're aware of it and you have your folder. With your folder of information, there's 10 different channels, but not all the base stations pick up all 10 channels. For example, Perth base, and I'll just be accurate here instead of guessing, Perth base only picks up channel 1, 2, 4, 5, 7, 8 and 10. So if I wanted to have a personal conversation, I could do it on channel 3, or I could do it on channel 6, or I could do it on channel 9, depending on the distance that we are. As I go down the list, like Kununurra only picks up channels 1, 2, 4 and 6. So if I'm up in the north, and again I'm trying to have a personal conversation or something, I can do it on channel 3 because I'm not going to interrupt anybody. However, you need to be mindful on the east coast. For example, Shepparton and Victoria, it picks up channels 1, 3, 5, 7 and 8. So if I want to make a personal conversation, I do it on channel 2 because I'm not going to interrupt people on channels 1 or 3 then. So yeah, provided you're aware of that and you know, again, you have that sort of basic understanding on how HF works, it's pretty easy. Well, I'm pretty sure that wraps up everything. I've talked about how a HF radio works, various components that make up your HF radio system, and then I've demonstrated sort of what I would use the HF radio for, and you know, I've tried to show you guys what the revertive is going to sound like when you receive it, and demonstrate that you need to test your connection with the base first before you go into sending off your bits and pieces of information like messages, GPS positions, that sort of thing. Likewise, when it comes time to do the Sched calls, it pays to 10 or 15 minutes out, jump on, ping the base station, ensure that you know which channel you should be on, and then obviously you can follow down the channels, well, you know, you can follow down through the channel list through each time slot, and it'll make a lot of sense to you once you see the Sched table layout. And you know, to be honest, I'd flick your radio on for a Sched call session and I would just jump through the channels, just listen in. You'll pick up what works well, what channel people are using for, or what channel you should be on for your distance. You'll also listen to people talking to the base operator and the protocols behind that, and you'll listen to the base operator talking out to people as well, so that when you go to do your first Sched call and check in, you have some idea what to say. And look, to be honest, the first time I went and did it, I was nervous as well, but it just comes with practice, familiarization. It's perfectly fine. The networks are always having new members. Go on there and just remain calm and talk clearly and slowly and concisely, and yeah, you'll quickly pick up whether the base operator is able to clearly hear you or not. Yeah, you know, I say muck around with it a little bit, but you know, really the only way you can learn these things is by giving it a bit of a go. Yeah, I mean they're pretty straightforward. They're nothing to be scared about, really. It's just like HF is just a big UHF. I know when I first got my HF, I was really nervous about using it. I was nervous about making a fool of myself, saying the wrong thing. But to be honest, it's really straightforward and it's pretty simple. You can't really get it wrong. And the only way that you get better is with practice. So I encourage all of you, if you've got a HF or you're getting a HF, jump on, practice, become familiar with it, become confident in using it so that when you go traveling, when you go out bush, you can just use it. And it's not something to be fearful of, right? It's there to help you out when you travel. So yeah, anyway, I think I've covered off everything that there is to know. Well, everything there is to know about the basics of HF. Now, there's a heap more that I can go into. If you have any questions, chuck them in the comments below, because again, I've just tried to do this basically covering off the bits and pieces that I didn't know when I first started out. So it's pitched at beginners. Now, obviously, I know there's some viewers out there that don't have HF radios, probably not going to have found this video useful at all. Sorry, sorry if that's you, but thank you very much if you've watched this far. And you never know, perhaps maybe I have convinced you that HF is not such a big, scary, bad thing to have. Anyway, guys, you know the deal. Happy, safe adventuring. Stay safe on the tracks and trails. If we don't see you out there, we'll see you in the next video. Anyway, if you've enjoyed it, subscribe down here and give us a like as well, and check out our other videos, which will probably be on the screen somewhere over here. Anyway, guys, see you next time.